I was on the side of the road in the dirt for 30 to 40 minutes is my estimation. It took that long for the detective to come back over and indicate that he was drawing up a criminal complaint against me, and that I would have the option of signing the criminal complaint when it was completed, and leaving or not signing, and being taken down to the jail and processed. During the time frame that I was actually laying on the ground there, I observed that the police officers were not stopping individuals in a preset pattern. They would wave several vehicles through, then stop one or two, and the pattern would ever shift for during that time frame. And I also observed that some vehicles, the officers were asking the drivers to pop the trunks so they could look into the trunks of vehicles. I also saw the officers, they were checking documentation, ostensibly the registrations against the license numbers on the back of the vehicles, probably checking for stolen vehicles and that sort of thing. So I was seeing a lot of behavior that made it clear that, once again, this was something far more than just a sobriety checkpoint. That, you know, if you're checking to see if a driver is drunk, you don't need to look into the trunk of their vehicle to determine whether or not they're drunk. So they were checking trunks. They were checking for stolen vehicles specifically. And at this time, I didn't. I saw vehicles being diverted from the flow of traffic into a secondary inspection area, but I didn't have a good view as to what was actually happening after vehicles were diverted off into a secondary inspection. So after I had been removed from my vehicle and taken off to the side of the road, I was there in the dirt for about 30 to 40 minutes. And after that 40-minute time frame, or I should say during that 40-minute time frame, one of the officers who helped drag me out of the vehicle, he actually came over several times and berated me for being non-cooperative, and referred to me as being a green freak for some strange reason during this time frame. And I could also, at one point during this 40-minute time frame, I heard the U.S. Customs agent, who was still operating on the front line, talking with a vehicle that had entered the checkpoint, and presumably it was somebody that he knew. And I heard an individual ask, "So has anything interesting happened tonight?" And the U.S. Customs agent responded with a remark that, "No, nothing other than some peace protester who decided to give us a hard time." Going back a little bit, during the time that I was conversing with the on-scene commander, in lieu of providing my driver's license, I gave him my first name, and he had indicated that he had concerns about the vehicle that I was driving having been stolen or being somehow misused. So I gave him the name and contact information for my supervisor so that he could call and check with him to verify that I had legitimate control of the vehicle. And during the time that I was conversing with the on-scene commander and the detective and the federal agent, another officer was calling back to my workplace and had actually come in contact with my supervisor, who had verified who I was and that I did indeed have legitimate control of the vehicle and that it wasn't stolen. And so at this point, the officer basically told them what was going on, and my supervisor and a coworker made plans at that time to come out to the checkpoint to find out what was going on and to recover the vehicle that I had been driving. So I probably had an opportunity to observe the checkpoint operations for between 3 and 4 hours after I was removed from the vehicle. And I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours into that time frame, my coworkers and supervisor arrived on scene. And so they were actually coming into the checkpoint from the opposite direction, and they had a much broader view of what was going on. And they observed the Border Patrol operating on the front lines with the tribal police and looking into vehicles as vehicles were entering the checkpoint. So these were vehicles that hadn't been come into contact with the primary stopping officer first, but there was line of traffic, and it gave the Border Patrol an opportunity to observe the vehicles, look into vehicles, and to run a dog up and down the line of traffic as they were waiting their turn to be stopped at primary. As my coworkers were observing the Border Patrol and a canine unit being run up and down the line of traffic that was waiting at the checkpoints, that seemed to be very out of place if the purpose of the checkpoint was indeed only to check for sobriety. Canine units aren't trained to detect drunk drivers. They're trained to detect various types of drugs and people.